Hello, I'm Roger Braveheart, and a very warm welcome to the 22-Minute Stories channel. Today, I'll be taking you through Dracula by Bram Stoker, one of the most famous Gothic novels ever written. I'd really welcome your suggestions. If there are any classic books you'd like me to cover in the future, please let me know in the comments. Okay, so without further delay, let's get cracking. The book begins with a brief introductory note explaining how these contemporary papers, journals and diaries have been placed in sequence. The compiler notes that all needless matters have been eliminated to present a history that stands forth as simple fact, despite being at variance with modern beliefs. Because these records are exactly contemporary and written from the standpoints of those who experienced the events, there is no reliance on fallible memory. This sets the stage for a terrifying journey, told through first-hand accounts, starting with a young solicitor's travel journal as he heads deep into the Carpathian Mountains to meet a mysterious nobleman. The narrative unfolds through letters, diaries, and phonograph records, creating a mosaic of suspense and horror. We follow the characters as they encounter an ancient evil that threatens their lives, their loved ones, and their very souls. This unique structure allows us to experience the dread and confusion of the protagonists in real time, making the unfolding nightmare incredibly vivid and immediate. As we dive into these records, we are invited to suspend our disbelief and witness a battle between modern science and ancient superstition. A young English solicitor travels through Eastern Europe to Transylvania to assist a nobleman with the purchase of a London estate. As he journeys deeper into the Carpathian Mountains, he notices a growing sense of dread among the local people. They offer him crucifixes, garlic, and wild roses, whispering words like vampire and werewolf, and making signs to ward off the evil eye. Despite these ominous warnings, he boards a carriage driven by a mysterious, incredibly strong driver who guides him through the dark, wolf-howling night to a vast, ruined castle. Upon his arrival, he is welcomed by the host, a courtly but strange old man with pale skin, pointed ears, and extremely sharp white teeth. The host insists on carrying his luggage himself, explaining that no servants are available. Over the next few days, the solicitor notices several bizarre details about his host. He never eats or drinks, he has no reflection in any mirror, and his hands are cold as ice with hair growing in the palms. The solicitor's unease turns to absolute terror when he realizes that all the doors in the castle are locked and bolted, making him a prisoner. During their late-night conversations, the host speaks passionately about his warlike ancestors and his plans to move to London. One night, the solicitor looks out his window and witnesses his host crawling down the castle wall face down like a lizard. Left alone, the solicitor explores the castle and finds a comfortable room where he falls asleep, ignoring his host's warning. He wakes to find three beautiful but terrifying women standing over him, whispering and laughing. One of them bends down to bite his throat, but the host suddenly appears in a fury, hurling her away and declaring that the solicitor belongs to him. The solicitor wakes up in his own bed, realizing the terrifying encounter with the three women was no dream. He finds his pockets intact, but discovers that all his travel papers, notes and letters of credit have been stolen. The host forces him to write 3 post-dated letters, stating that he has left the castle and arrived safely in Bistritz, effectively plotting to erase any trace of his existence. Desperate for help, the solicitor tries to smuggle letters out through a band of gypsies encamped in the courtyard, but the host intercepts them and burns his letter to his fiancée. Soon after, a convoy of Slovak workmen arrives, unloading large wooden boxes filled with earth into the castle yard. The solicitor tries to call out to them, but they ignore his pleas. One night, he witnesses the host leaving the castle wearing the solicitor's own clothes, intending to create false sightings of him in the nearby towns. Later, a distraught woman arrives at the castle gates screaming for her stolen child. The host summons a pack of wolves, which quickly silence her. Realizing his days are numbered, the solicitor makes a desperate attempt to escape. He climbs out of his window and crawls down the sheer precipice to reach the host's room. He finds it empty except for a massive pile of ancient gold. Descending a winding stair, he enters a ruined chapel filled with the newly delivered boxes of earth. In one of the boxes, he finds the host lying in a deathly trance, his eyes open and stony but his face warm and youthful. Terrified, the solicitor flees back to his room. Meanwhile, in England, his fiancée writes to her dear friend, sharing her busy life as a schoolmistress and her joy over her upcoming marriage. Her friend replies with exciting news of her own, revealing that she has received 3 marriage proposals in a single day from a devoted doctor, a wealthy American, and her true love, a noble gentleman. The 2 young women reunite in the seaside town of Whitby, enjoying the fresh air and beautiful views from the cliffs. They spend their days in the local churchyard, befriending an eccentric old sailor who scoffs at local legends and superstitions. However, the fiancée grows increasingly anxious as she has not heard from her beloved solicitor for over a month. Meanwhile, her friend begins to walk in her sleep again, a habit from her childhood that causes great concern. At the same time, the doctor who runs a nearby lunatic asylum records the bizarre behaviour of a patient named Renfield. This patient has a morbid obsession with consuming life, systematically feeding flies to spiders, spiders to sparrows, and then begging for a cat to eat the birds. The doctor classifies him as a life-eating maniac who seeks to absorb vital energy. Back in Whitby, a sudden and violent storm breaks over the coast. A mysterious foreign schooner is seen rushing toward the harbour at headlong speed with all its sails set. The searchlight reveals a horrifying sight. A dead man is lashed to the wheel, his hands holding a crucifix. As the ship crashes onto the shore, an immense dog leaps from the deck and disappears into the darkness. The dead captain's log reveals a terrifying voyage from Varna, during which the crew members vanished one by one, driven mad by a pale, thin stranger hiding in the cargo of earth-filled boxes. Shortly after the storm, the sleepwalking friend escapes from her room in the dead of night. Her companion searches the town and finds her half reclining on their favourite churchyard seat. In the moonlight, a dark, shadowy figure with red eyes seems to bend over her. When the companion approaches, the shadow vanishes, leaving the girl pale, gasping for breath, with 2 tiny red puncture wounds on her throat. The fiancée finally receives wonderful news. Her beloved solicitor has been found in a hospital in Budapest, recovering from a violent brain fever. She immediately travels to his side, finding him weak, pale, and unable to remember his ordeal. They are married at the hospital, and he gives her his travel journal, wrapping it in white paper and sealing it with her wedding ring, promising never to open it unless a solemn duty requires it. Back in England, the sleepwalking girl's health begins to fail rapidly. Her fiancé, deeply concerned, begs his old friend, the asylum doctor, to examine her. The doctor finds her severely bloodless, but cannot identify any physical disease. In his perplexity, he summons his esteemed master, the brilliant Professor Van Helsing from Amsterdam. The professor examines the girl and is horrified by her condition, realizing she has lost a massive amount of blood. He declares that an immediate transfusion is necessary to save her life. Her strong young fiancé gladly volunteers, and the operation temporarily restores some colour to her cheeks. However, the professor notices 2 strange wounds on her throat and grows deeply suspicious. He returns to Amsterdam to gather books and instruments, leaving the doctor to watch over her. Despite their vigilance, the girl suffers another sudden relapse, her blood drained once more. This time, the doctor provides his own blood for a second transfusion. When the professor returns, he brings a large shipment of common garlic flowers from Harlem. To the doctor's surprise, the professor rubs garlic over the window sashes, doors, and fireplace, and hangs a wreath of garlic around the girl's neck, warning her never to remove it. The girl finds peace in the scent and falls into a restful sleep, but her mother, unaware of the danger, removes the smelly flowers and opens the window, leaving her daughter vulnerable once more. The doctor arrives at the house to find it locked. He and the professor force their way inside and discover the servants drugged with laudanum. Upstairs, they find the girl's mother dead from a heart attack, and the girl herself near death, her throat horribly mangled. They administer brandy and a warm bath to revive her. A wealthy American friend arrives just in time to provide his blood for a 4th transfusion. Although she temporarily rallies, her strength is spent. The solicitor's wife, now back in England, writes to her friend, unaware of the tragedy, sharing the sudden death of their benefactor, Mr. Hawkins, which has left them with a large fortune. In London, the dying girl's behaviour grows increasingly strange. While asleep, her teeth appear longer and sharper, and she tries to tear the garlic from her neck. When she wakes, she clutches the flowers close. As the end nears, she falls into a trance-like state and calls out to her fiancé in a voluptuous voice, begging him to kiss her. The professor violently pulls him back, warning that it would mean the destruction of his soul. The girl briefly regains her true, sweet self, thanks the professor, and passes away. After her death, her beauty strangely returns, her cheeks regaining their colour. The professor reveals a horrifying plan to the doctor. He wants to cut off the dead girl's head and take out her heart. The doctor is shocked and refuses, but the professor begs him to have faith, hinting at a terrible mystery that is only just beginning. Meanwhile, the solicitor's wife reads her husband's journal and realizes the terrifying truth of his ordeal. The professor tries to convince the doubting doctor of the existence of vampires, pointing to recent news reports of young children being lured away on Hampstead Heath by a beautiful lady and returning with tiny puncture wounds on their throats. To prove his theory, the professor takes the doctor to the tomb of their deceased friend in the dead of night. They unscrew the coffin lid and find it completely empty. The doctor suggests body snatchers, but the professor insists they wait outside. In the moonlight, they witness a white, dim figure flitting through the churchyard, carrying a small child. The professor intercepts the figure, rescuing the unharmed child, and they return the next day to find the deceased girl lying in her coffin, looking radiantly beautiful, with red lips and sharp canine teeth. The doctor is finally convinced of the horrifying truth. Their beloved friend has become one of the undead. The professor explains that they must perform a ritual to free her soul, but he wants her fiancé to witness the truth first, so he does not suffer from doubts. They arrange a meeting with the fiancé and the American friend, explaining that they must enter the tomb. The fiancé is initially outraged by what he sees as a desecration of his love's grave, but he agrees to accompany them. When they open the coffin and find it empty once more, they wait in the churchyard. At midnight, they witness the undead woman return, her mouth smeared with fresh blood, callously flinging a child to the ground. She voluptuously beckons her fiancé to her arms, but the professor drives her back with a golden crucifix. Baffled and full of malice, she slips through the tiny crevice of the tomb door. The next day, the fiancé bravely drives a wooden stake through her heart, freeing her soul and restoring her face to its natural, peaceful sweetness. The group of friends forms a solemn alliance to track down and destroy the Vampire King. The solicitor's wife joins them, using her incredible organizational skills to compile all their journals, letters, and records into a single chronological typescript. This collective knowledge becomes their greatest weapon. She also visits the asylum patient, Renfield, who surprises her with his sudden politeness and rational conversation, though he warns her to leave the house for her own safety. The professor praises her brilliant mind and brave heart, but insists that she must be kept out of their future, dangerous deliberations to protect her from the horrors ahead. The men set out to locate the 50 boxes of earth that the monster brought to London. The solicitor traces the cargo from Whitby to the deserted house next to the asylum, discovering that 21 boxes have already been removed to other locations in London. Through diligent research, he tracks 9 boxes to a mansion in Piccadilly, realizing the monster has been moving them himself. Meanwhile, the asylum doctor notices a strange pattern in Renfield's behavior, which seems to fluctuate with the movements of the monster. Renfield expresses a deep dread of being burdened with the souls of the creatures he consumes, hinting that he has been promised a higher, human life by his master. The professor lectures the group on the history and limitations of the vampire, explaining that while the monster possesses the strength of 20 men and can command the elements and beasts, he is also a prisoner of natural laws. He cannot enter a home unless invited, cannot cross running water except at high or slack tide, and is powerless during the day. Armed with this knowledge, the men prepare to launch their campaign, unaware that a dark shadow is already creeping over their sanctuary. The doctor is summoned to Renfield's room, where the patient is found lying in a pool of blood, his face horribly bruised and his back broken. Realizing the gravity of the injuries, the professor performs an emergency operation on his skull to relieve the pressure on his brain. As Renfield regains temporary consciousness, he reveals a horrifying truth. He confesses that the monster came to his window in the mist, promising him millions of lives in exchange for worship. Renfield admitted him, but when he realized the monster was taking the lifeblood of the solicitor's wife, he tried to fight him. The monster easily overpowered him, flinging him to the floor. Realizing the immediate danger, the men rush to the solicitor's room. They burst through the locked door and witness a nightmare. The solicitor lies in a deep stupor, while his wife is forced by the monster to drink blood from a vein in his chest. The monster cowers before the professor's sacred wafer and vanishes into a thin vapor. The poor wife screams in terror and despair, weeping that she is now unclean and must no longer touch her husband. The next morning, the friends gather to plan their next move. They decide that she must be kept in full confidence, as she bravely declares she will watch for any sign of harm in herself and die if necessary to protect them. The professor touches her forehead with a piece of the sacred wafer to protect her, but it instantly sears her flesh like hot metal, leaving a red scar of shame. She falls to her knees, wailing that she is polluted, but the professor comforts her, swearing that the scar will pass away when the evil is destroyed. The men then set out to sterilize the boxes of earth at the nearby deserted house, placing a portion of the host in each. The friends wait anxiously in the Piccadilly mansion for the return of their companions, who have gone to locate and sterilize the remaining boxes of earth in the east and south of London. The professor explains that the monster's child brain is growing, but their collective man-brains can still outwit him. Suddenly they receive a telegram from the solicitor's wife, warning them that the monster has left his lair and is heading south. Soon after, the companions return, having successfully destroyed all the boxes at Bermondsey and Mile End. As they prepare their defence, they hear a key turn in the lock. The monster leaps into the room, but the solicitor attacks him with a great knife, cutting his coat and scattering a bundle of banknotes and gold. The monster cowers before their crucifixes and escapes through the window, mocking them and swearing revenge. Realizing he has only one box left, the monster flees London. The next morning, the professor hypnotizes the solicitor's wife at dawn. In her trance, she hears the lapping of waves and the creaking of masts, revealing that the monster is on a ship. Through diligent research at Lloyd's, they discover he has boarded a vessel bound for Varna. The professor realizes they must follow him to his castle to destroy him forever, as the wife is now tainted and will become a vampire herself if the monster survives. She begs to accompany them, realizing her hypnotic connection can help them track his movements. The friends make their wills and prepare for a perilous journey across Europe, determined to reach Varna before the ship arrives. The solicitor's wife feels a temporary peace as the monster's distance weakens his hold over her, but the red scar on her forehead remains a constant reminder of their desperate race against time. The friends arrive in Varna, but after a week of waiting, they learn that the monster's ship has bypassed the port and entered Galatz. Realizing the monster has used the wife's mind to discover their plans, they quickly board a train to Galatz. The wife's hypnotic trances reveal that the monster is now travelling up a river in an open boat, propelled by Slovaks. She deduces that he is heading toward his castle via the Sereth and Bistritza rivers. The group divides. The fiancé and the solicitor pursue him by steam launch, the doctor and the American friend follow on horseback along the riverbank, and the professor takes the wife directly to the castle. As they near the Borgo Pass, the wife grows increasingly lethargic, sleeping all day and becoming wakeful only at night. The professor fears the vampire's influence is growing. One night, they are surrounded by the three ghostly women, who try to lure the wife away, but she is protected by a holy circle of crumbled wafer. The next day, the professor enters the castle, destroys the three vampire women, and sterilizes the monster's tomb. That afternoon, they spot a group of gypsies carrying a great wooden chest on a cart, racing for the sunset. The friends converge on the cart just as the sun is about to set. A fierce struggle ensues. The solicitor and the American friend force their way to the cart. With a mighty effort, they fling the chest to the ground and pry open the lid. Inside lies the pale monster. Just as the sun touches the mountaintops, the solicitor shears through his throat with his great knife, while the American plunges his bowie knife into his heart. The monster's body instantly crumbles into dust, his face filled with a look of peace. The brave American friend dies of his wounds, rejoicing that the curse has passed away, and the wife's forehead is once more stainless. I believe that the author, through this terrifying narrative, was trying to highlight the profound clash between modern Victorian progress and ancient, forgotten forces. Throughout the text, we see a constant tension between the latest advancements of the 19th century, such as the typewriter, shorthand, phonographs and blood transfusions, and the dark, occult superstitions of the Carpathian Mountains. I think the story suggests that modern society, in its scientific skepticism and self-assurance, is dangerously vulnerable to ancient evils because it refuses to believe in what it cannot explain. The characters initially dismiss the warnings of the peasants as mere ignorance, nearly costing them their lives. It is only when they learn to believe in the impossible, combining their scientific methods with ancient spiritual protections like garlic and the host, that they find the strength to overcome the monster. Furthermore, I believe the book conveys a powerful message about the strength of collective unity and self-devotion. While the monster represents a solitary, selfish force of destruction, the protagonists succeed because they form a selfless alliance, willing to sacrifice their own blood and lives for the safety of others. The story also highlights a deep moral point about the nature of pity and redemption. Even in their grim quest for destruction, the characters are reminded that their work is not one of hate but of mercy, to free the souls of the undead and restore them to peace. In my opinion, the author may have been warning us that while modern science can achieve great wonders, we must never lose our faith or ignore the spiritual dimensions of our existence, lest we leave ourselves open to the dark forces that still walk the earth. Thank you for staying till the end. You obviously are a glutton for punishment. Please hit the like icon if you thought this video deserves it, so other people get to see it. Hopefully the summary length for this video was about right, but if not, let me know and I will adjust it in the future. Now, YouTube have put on screen a channel subscribe icon and below it my latest video for you to check out. See you next time.